Hey everyone, it's Sarah here and welcome back to the Queerpreneur podcast. And this week's episode is on a topic that feels like it's an ongoing conversation right now. It feels like something that is really, really important and at the forefront of people's minds. So whether I'm talking to allies, whether I'm talking to a mix of allies and people from the LGBTQ+ community, we are talking about gender inclusion, we are talking about language, and we're talking about pronouns. And it's something that is so important to understand for all of us if we do want to create these safe, inclusive and welcoming spaces for everyone. Pronouns and gender identity are kind of like the beginning, really. I mean, we can start in different places, but I think this is a real foundational element of really understanding gender identity and pronouns and why they matter. And it will help us navigate the conversations and create the environments where all genders and people who use different pronouns feel they are accepted and included. And if after you've had a listen to today's episode, let me know if you've got any questions. Just message me over on Instagram or send me an email and I'll be really happy to chat further with you. Because fundamentally what I'm talking about today, this is about not discriminating, not causing harm to people. And it's about being kind, inclusive. Now that is what it is about. Being kind, being inclusive and welcoming to everyone that you come into contact with, whether that's in your life, in your everyday life, or whether it's in your business. This is something that you do. This is who you are. This is about allyship, and this is about taking action in your allyship. And so to help you with this, in this episode, I am giving you 10 actions or tips, kind of like how-to, so that when it comes to sharing your pronouns, inviting other people to share their pronouns, and navigating the conversations around pronouns, why they matter, gender identity, what it is, how it's different from sexuality, how it's different from the sex that you were assigned at birth, all of those things, you're going to feel more equipped to have those conversations. And I'm really hoping that you're going to also feel able to start having conversations with family, loved ones, friends, business buddies, and maybe even random people that you meet, so that you can be the ally that you want to be. So let's dive in. Hey everybody, I'm Sarah Taylor, and welcome to the Queerpreneur podcast. This is the place for queer women who want to start or grow their business and their straight allies, where we build community, raise awareness, and create a platform to celebrate incredible women leaders, change makers, and trailblazers. In every episode, my intention is to share knowledge, learning, and resources that inspire you to think big, create more impact, and step fully into your life and business in a way that feels authentic to you. So if you're ready to take action towards creating a more equal world for everyone, then let's get started. So I'm going to kick off by starting with gender identity. Now, I just want to be clear that gender identity is not the same as biological sex. So gender identity is the way that a person feels and experiences themselves in the world. So it's the gender that a person considers themselves to be. That's it. It's that simple. So a person who might have been categorized as male because of their genitals at birth may decide on their gender identity as being female or non-binary or something other than male or female. And people can identify as male, female, and all things in between, all things outside man and woman. And that includes, but is not limited to, but it includes terms like, or gender identities like non-binary, transgender, gender fluid, or genderqueer. People can identify in a way that feels right for them. And actually, there are so many different gender identities. And I think this is actually a really fascinating topic. And I've learned so much more about it myself, because the reality is that there are many, many gender identities, because every single one of us is so unique. So for me, I do identify as a woman, female, and that is the gender that I was assigned at birth. However, when I start to think about this for myself, from my own perspective, I think, well, I actually don't identify as feminine, if you like, as some other women possibly do. And I feel different to some women, you know, but we all identify as female, but yet I might feel less feminine. I wouldn't say I feel masculine, but less feminine than they do. And maybe I am moving towards the masculine end of the spectrum. So it's really interesting when we start thinking about these things, because I think we do feel different to each other. And actually, you know, when I look at it like that, I have my own unique gender. And that is really freeing and amazing and incredible. And it just enables us to be our very unique selves. So when we start looking at this binary gender, and by binary gender I mean male or female, man, woman, boy, girl, it's so limiting. And then when you take it to the sort of perspective and the reality for people, is that we are put in a box from the moment we're born for the rest of our lives, in theory. And of course it isn't like that, but that is the kind of almost like the assumption that is made. And so if growing up, it just doesn't feel like you, it's incredibly confusing and incredibly isolating. And it's going to bring up really difficult feelings, thoughts, and experiences. You know, and I think one of the ways that I thought about this when I was making this podcast episode, you know, is like, it's almost like, for me, I thought, well, I would say I was a bit of a tomboy, right? And tomboy has got all sorts of connotations, and it's not a great term in terms of terminology. And we're not going to, you know, dismantle that and unpick that on this podcast episode. But the thing about tomboy was that it was accepted, you know, it was an accepted thing to be referred to as. And, you know, although it's incredibly stereotypical, I think it does illustrate a point. So although it's problematic in many ways, it may be useful for this podcast episode, for this conversation I'm having with you right now, because it illustrates a point. I was allowed to be considered a tomboy, you know, and that in a way gave me a little bit of space in my binary box of being a girl, of growing up as a girl. It almost allowed that binary box for me to expand and allow that tomboy part of me to be present. So this is an example, I guess, of the ways that we're constrained and limited and literally boxed in because the society says boy, girl, blue, pink, etc. And whether that fits who we are or not, they are the options. And so looking at that sort of tomboy example, you know, it gave me a little bit more space in my box. Imagine if you are a transgender young person or child, or you grow up and you just know that it doesn't feel like you, right? And the amount of not only the way that limits you, but how wrong or ashamed or different you start to feel when you realise that it just doesn't feel like you don't feel like you're fitting. and why you try so hard to squeeze yourself into those norms, because it's all you see. Nothing else is really visible. And for me, when I think about squeezing myself into societal norms, I didn't have that experience around my gender identity, but I sure as hell had it around my sexuality. Because the world puts me into a heterosexual, a straight box. And if you are gay, certainly when I was growing up, yes, it's getting better. And I've talked about that a lot on this podcast, where it's better, where it's not getting better. And actually, we must not get complacent about any of this stuff. But, if you were gay, or if you wondered if you like girls as well as boys, there was no place for you. So no wonder we feel wrong or different and ashamed of that. So to be really clear, gender identity is different to sex. So it's different to biological sex. So the biological sex, or the sex you were assigned at birth, i.e. male, female, or intersex, is not the same as gender identity. So it may be that you're assigned female at birth and you identify as a woman. However, many people identify differently to the sex on their birth certificate. So women who were assigned male at birth and men who were assigned female at birth, right? And non-binary people who were assigned either male or female at birth. You get the gist. And sexuality and romantic attraction is also entirely different, which is another thing that I think many people get confused about. So what I've done is I've linked in the show notes, I've linked to a great resource. It's called The Gender Unicorn, and it's a really quick and easy guide to the differences between gender identity, attraction, biological sex, and gender expression. So do check that out and download that, because I think it will really help you. So I'm hoping that this is starting to help you understand why gender identity is an important aspect of who someone is. And of course, it is just one part of who we are. So I identify as a woman. I'm also a lesbian. I'm also an entrepreneur and a business owner. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a nature lover. I'm a sea swimmer with a camper van and a dream to live in another country someday. My gender is important, but I'm also so much more than that, as we all are, right? So let's talk about pronouns, people. Why do they matter so much, and why they are relevant to you, even if you are like, well, I'm cisgendered. And to remind you what cisgendered means, that means you identify, so your gender identity matches the sex that you were assigned at birth, right? That is cisgender. I'm sure you've heard that term. So if you're cisgender, and or you're heterosexual, you're straight, why are pronouns? Why do they matter to you? So the majority of us have been taught to use visual shortcuts to decide on or determine someone's gender, right? So we might look at their hairstyle or their clothes or their name or the way that they move or whatever it is about them. And from all of those things, we decide what gender they are. We tend to decide whether they are a man or a woman, male or female. And these things are not someone's gender. They are the way that someone expresses themselves, sure, but they are different to their gender identity. And, why we assume that their gender is based on these things is because that is what society has taught us to do. I mean, we wouldn't assume someone's name based on those things, would we? And when we do assume someone's gender based on those things, it can be really harmful. It can be insulting and distressing for that person, right? I'm going to talk more about this. So pronouns are a way of helping us to communicate, to connect, to understand people, to understand each other. And they are a very common, used part of language, the way that we, engage with each other. So the most common pronouns are she, her and hers, and he, him and his, and they, them and theirs. Now, they, them and theirs is a non-gendered pronoun. It's probably the most common, but there are others. So for today, I'm just going to use those three: she, her, he, his, they, them. And it's also probably just worth noting at this point that some people would rather you just use their name. So that's worth including for you here too. The thing about all of these things, I think, is that actually makes it more fascinating and interesting. I can't hand you a prescription. This is something that we learn, we understand. It is nuanced. And we navigate our way through, and we have to communicate with each other. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure, as we go on. So pronouns are a way of expressing and acknowledging and respecting the very existence of another human being. So when we refer to someone as she or he or they, we're telling them that they are being seen, heard and respected for who they are. Pronouns can connect us, or they can isolate and alienate us. So one thing I would ask you is, please don't question someone's pronouns or say things like, well, they, them just doesn't work, or it's not proper, it's not correct. Because when you do that, if you do that, or you hear someone else doing that, you're questioning the very nature of someone's identity. And that hurts, right? So pronouns matter because when you get them wrong, it can cause harm, or it can make that person uncomfortable, unseen, or feel misunderstood. And referring to someone by the wrong pronouns is called misgendering. So referring to somebody as she or he when they identify as non-binary, for example. And of course, referring to someone as she when they identify as he, or he when they identify as she, would be misgendering. And being misgendered is something to really, really be mindful of, because it can make people feel annoyed, it can make them feel alone, frustrated, invisible, afraid, exhausted, especially if it happens to somebody on a regular basis. And it can make somebody feel really wrong in their body as well. So even if you don't get it, even if you don't fully get it, why this matters so much, please learn how to use the pronouns that people request, because if you like them, if you love them, if you work with them, we all have to share this space on this wonderful planet of ours together, right? So how do you have that conversation? How do you explore with somebody, find out from someone what pronouns they use, and how do you share your own? So I always say, start by sharing your own pronouns when you meet somebody, and invite them to do the same. Make it an invitation. So more of if they'd like to rather than a demand, because some people may be questioning this themselves right now, right in this moment when you're meeting them, and they might not be ready to talk about it. So I think the thing there, if that is the case and they don't share their pronouns with you, then before you make any assumptions, use they, them pronouns for that person until you do know. And I've also heard, and I think I've done this myself in the past, is I've said I prefer to use she, her pronouns. Or I've asked people what they prefer to use. And actually I've learned, I'm learning all along with all of you too, that your pronouns are not a preference. The pronouns that we use, that each of us use, are our pronouns. They're not preferred, right? So get into the habit as well of asking people, what pronouns do they use? I use XYZ pronouns. And another question that I get asked quite often is, what happens if I mess up? What happens if I get it wrong? How do I deal with that? I'm worried about making a mistake. And I think this could be probably one of the biggest reasons why people don't even go there, don't even enter into this space and have this conversation. Well, the best advice I can give you, if you do mess up, is say sorry, correct yourself, and carry on with the conversation. Don't make a big deal of it, right? And I think an interesting sort of like analogy, I suppose, that I heard someone say recently, it's a bit like when you meet someone's in the park and they're with their dog, or you go around to their house and that you sort of meet their cat, if you like, and you might say, oh, what's his name? And the owner says, they're a girl. And you just say, oh, sorry, what's her name? You don't worry about it afterwards. You don't make a big deal of it. And I quite like that. Not that I want to suggest that any of us are like cats or dogs, but you get the idea. And before I give you my top 10 how-tos or top 10 tips, I also want to say that, if a straight, cisgendered person asks you why you're asking them what their pronouns are or why you're sharing your pronouns, it might be in a group environment, for example, then you simply tell them, that you're committed to being inclusive and you don't want to make assumptions about anyone's gender. You don't want to harm people. You don't want to discriminate, right? You want to create welcoming spaces in your life and in your business. And that you ask everyone this when you first meet them, right? That is the role model. And as I'm saying that, I'm speaking this to you now, it's like making me feel emotional. I fucking love it, when people are able to stand in that commitment to inclusion and stand against all these societal shit, norms and cultural conditioning. It's all just a construct. That is how we create change. Right, so I'm going to round this up with 10 tips, how-tos for you. So first of all, number 1, share your pronouns first. So I would say, I'm Sarah and I use she, her pronouns. And then you can follow that up with, if you'd like to share yours, please do, right? Number 2, which is a follow-on, invite them to share theirs, but don't expect it. Remember they might be questioning or struggling right now. And if they don't tell you what they are, assume they them until they do. And most people will. Most people will tell you. Number 3, if you're in a group, ask everyone to share their pronouns. So, hi everyone, if you'd like to share your name and your pronouns, that would be fantastic. Don't single people out because they're one person or 2 people that you're not sure of. That is just going to feel awkward and uncomfortable for those people. And yes, I get that it might take a bit longer to do the introductions. And some people might feel it's excessive or whatever they feel. It doesn't matter, because when we're trying to create an environment where everyone feels included and welcome, that is what needs to take priority. Number 4, by doing this, you are role modeling great ally behaviours, and you're helping others to practice and respect different pronouns outside the male-female binary. And that is amazing, right? So I love you for doing that. Number 5, remember that being misgendered can make people feel wrong in their body, alone, invisible, exhausted by correcting people and then potentially giving up on even correcting people, and just feeling, alone and frustrated and causing them harm, right? Number 6, even if you don't get it, please learn how to use the pronouns that people request. because we all need to live together on this planet and we all share space on this planet together. And this is about respect. This is about connection and communicating and living in a way where, we are all human beings, right? So we are not that different. Number 7, it's natural to make mistakes. We all slip up sometimes. We all do. And that includes people in the LGBTQ plus community. I'm not just talking to straight cisgender people in this whole episode. This is about all of us. We all slip up sometimes, me included. So just correct yourself and move on. You don't need to make it about you, your apology, your discomfort. We know that you didn't want to hurt anyone intentionally. And, be kind, listen, learn. And if you mess up, move on quickly, right? We all know it happens as well. It's going to happen. Number 8, this might feel clunky at first. Understanding, learning pronouns, sharing your own pronouns. And the only way really to learn is to practice. Because so many of us are so used to binary language, binary programs, binary pronouns, and we talk about it, and language is a whole other thing really, but it's all connected. Ladies, guys, sir, madam, they're all binary. So start practicing. Everyone, folks, team, hey everybody, hey everyone. And really try and stop with the guys and the ladies. I mean, who even likes ladies? I don't even know who likes ladies, but it's kind of lazy, right? Because we've got into that habitual way. Just hello everyone, or okay everyone, or how you doing everyone, or lovelies, how you doing today my lovelies? Whatever works for you. But really, yes, move away from those gender binary language and terms. Number 9, if you hear someone else using the incorrect pronouns for somebody and it feels safe for you to do so, you can step in and you can say something like, hey, Nick uses they, them pronouns, gender neutral pronouns. Or hey, Nick uses she, her pronouns, not he, him. That's all you need to say. You can do it in the moment, or if that doesn't feel appropriate, you don't want that person to, really be uncomfortable, even though they're making Nick feel uncomfortable, then you can make sure you catch up with them as soon as possible afterwards and let them know so they don't do it again, because the last thing Nick needs is to keep being misgendered. And I would also add to that one, check in with that LGBTQ plus person just to see that they're okay for you to step in for them like this. And I can promise you that 99% of the time they're going to be really, really grateful for your support. Because no one should have to justify or explain why they use different pronouns. It's all of our responsibility to be a kind, decent human being and to learn and use whatever pronouns people ask us to. And number 10, my final one, is educate other people. Be the amazing ally you are. Pass on the link to this podcast. Share resources with them. Stonewall's website is just like the most obvious place to go. My website has got resources on it. Be part of the change that we are all seeking, right? I know you are, and I know you're here, and I know you're doing it, and I love you for it. So I hope that's been helpful. And as always, thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Thank you so much for being an amazing ally. And if you haven't downloaded my simple guide to LGBTQ plus inclusion yet, the link is in the show notes. It gives you really clear guidance on how to create inclusive, welcoming and safe spaces for LGBTQ plus people, whether that's in your life or whether that's in your business. You need that guide. So please download it. What else do I want to say to you? Yeah. Any questions? All you need to do is DM me over on Instagram or send me an email. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a review. The more reviews we get, the more people get to see the podcast and get to hear about the podcast, because that's the way the algorithm works. So I'd love some reviews so that we can help more people and we can share this information and this content and all the great people that I have on as interview guests as well. So much love to you all. Catch you next time. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Bye for now.